Welcome to the Veterinary Marketing Podcast, where it's all about helping your veterinary practice attract, engage, and retain clients. Broadcasting a new podcast every Monday from sunny Southern California, here's your host, Brandon Bashirs.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to episode number 224 of the Veterinary Marketing Podcast. Hope you're having a wonderful day. In today's episode, we have a very special guest. We have Brandon Boyd from Vet and Pet SEO. We talk about SEO, all kinds of marketing stuff. It's a really jam-packed episode full of tons of value, so I know you're going to love it. Before we begin, I want to mention a couple things. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. And if you haven't done it yet, be sure to go on over to the Veterinary Marketing Nerds Facebook group and request to join. It's completely free, and you can get a ton of help from really smart people that are marketers in the veterinary industry. So head on over there. There's a lot of practice owners, a lot of practice managers, and a lot of people that are doing marketing. So if you have any questions or you need ideas or help with anything, again, that's the best place to go. All right, so let's jump into today's episode. So I have a special guest today, Brandon Boyd from Vet and Pet SEO. He's a fellow podcaster in the veterinary industry. He just started the Practice Heist podcast, and I was a guest on his podcast as well. Check out that episode. But I really enjoyed conversation with Brandon. Other than having a really cool name, he is very knowledgeable about marketing, and it's always fun to talk with other marketing professionals, especially marketing professionals in the veterinary industry. I think that we really align on a lot of the things that we are doing in our marketing and the way that we approach marketing. And so I really like his background and his story, and I think he is definitely somebody that you should check out, and be sure to subscribe to his podcast and check him out. So without further ado, here's the interview with Brandon Boyd from vetandpetseo.com. All right, today we have Brandon Boyd joining me on the podcast. It's exciting to have you here, Brandon. You're with vetandpetseo.com. Excited to have you here. We had a great conversation on your podcast, which was really cool. I don't get on too many podcasts, so it was very fun to talk with you on yours.
Yeah.
So it's great to have you on my podcast too. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. This is a real honor. In the veterinary space, you're a legend in the podcast game. So to be invited on yours, and even for you to come onto mine, it was a huge honor. So I appreciate it, Brandon.
Brandon's podcast as well. I'm definitely going to link to it on the show notes here, so check that out. There's been some great interviews with Danielle Lampert. We had lots of great guests so far, so that's really cool. So be sure to go check that out. And as we get started here today, can you kind of tell us about how you got started in the veterinary industry and kind of what led you to marketing as well?
Okay. Well, so I am a ex-chemical engineer. Got my degree at the University of Alabama, and I work for a company called Ascend Performance Materials as an electrochemical engineer in the research lab. And during that same time, I was in graduate school as well. And I love graduate school. I love research, but a lot of the conversation was about personal branding and marketing yourself. And I knew after graduate school that I wanted to start a business. That's just something I already knew. It's been an aspiration of mine, something that I wanted to do. So I figured, okay, while I have the little bit of free time I had in graduate school, I was like, okay, so let me start learning more about business, learning more about marketing. And as I started going down that path, it seemed almost it just blared in front of me that, okay, a lot of small businesses need business development. So I started a company, Lexoid Marketing, just to help with business development, management consulting. But as I started researching a lot of these companies, it wasn't the fact that their systems were bad. It was the fact that they didn't have enough throughput, enough customers to actually see where all the bad spots were. So it's just like if you are pressure testing a house for plumbing, right? You don't know where the leaks are until you put enough pressure to show where the leaks are.
Yep.
And so their issues were not business development and streamlining processes. It was bringing customers through the door. So as I started researching what part of business would handle that, it came into marketing. Marketing was the thing that, okay, marketing is going to bring eyes to a business, and depending on your sales process, it's going to bring dollars through the door. So I focused my business in 2017 just strictly on marketing and digital marketing at that, because that was the easiest way to get eyes to a business. So I started my business there. I worked with different industries, construction companies, some startups. I worked with dentists, chiropractors, gyms. I built websites as well. And then last year, a buddy of mine, she's a vet, she started her mobile clinic. And just because of my experience with marketing and then understanding business development within like the space I was in, I was able to give her some ideas and show her some things that could help grow her mobile clinic. And during the time of COVID, she basically wanted me to help her do her marketing because she was exhausted from doing everything within her business, which as an entrepreneur, you understand you wear many hats. So I told her, look, I'll take over the marketing reign. And from then on, I started researching the vet space, and I realized that the industry itself, as far as digital marketing, is probably around 5 to 10 years behind some of the other industries that I've worked with. So I saw a huge opportunity to help the vet space, grow faster when it comes to digital marketing. So I took on that. I took that task at hand, and I'm in it now.
Very cool. That's very kind of similar, just happening into it and seeing that there was a big need inside the space, and
Yeah.
definitely a big need. And I mean, that's even just the practices that we can see that have an online presence. There's probably even more that are not even online, which so very cool. Well, when we were talking last, I had some questions for you, because I think that there's so much that people don't know about marketing and SEO and all things marketing. So with marketing in general, how do you take a look at and approach marketing for a veterinary hospital, and what do you think kind of the first things that they should be looking at are when they're thinking about their marketing for their practice?
So the first thing my framework is to always solve a problem first, because if you can solve a problem, and if you have a product or service to solve a problem, then you're more than likely to be able to exchange that value and communication to get them to purchase that product or service to solve that problem. So that's the first thing. So you would think that for veterinarians, you would think a pet lover would automatically see the value of a heartworm medication if your animal has heartworms, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to the promotion of that product, what's the first thing that they promote? The features.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this heartworm medication lasts 90 days. This heartworm medication it's soft and it gives a dental cleaning. That's all fine and good, and that's great. But the sale, if you want to use the term sale, I know that's a buzzword when it comes to the vet industry. They don't like selling, but the sale is this heartworm medication will prevent pain in your pet because it's going to prevent the heartworms from forming and giving your pet illness. That's the sale, right? Because it solved that problem first, and all the benefits afterwards is just choosing between one product or another. Once you find that solution for the problem, then the product is just a placement of one if they need 90-day or 180-day, or if they have $15 product versus a $30 product, right? But sell them on the fact that they need to solve this problem first. And that's how I go about it when it comes to veterinarians. And when it comes to like services that are like the holistic care.
Yeah.
The holistic care type of services they're still sort of taboo. So those type of services, you have to sell on the benefits of them. The alternative care, you have to sell on the benefits of those. And so when it comes to marketing for those particular services, that's the framework I go for first. What is the benefit of this service without having to sell a feature?
Yep, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Totally makes sense. And I think especially I think beyond that too, there's the whole kind of aspect of the people have that product or service. Are they even aware that that's a product or service? I think a lot of times too, people may not know about certain holistic type treatments, especially like I see a lot of stuff with stem cell actually being offered, which is pretty interesting. So that's really interesting for a framework. So when somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I want marketing help, and they tell you maybe a specific tactic or a specific strategy that they want to start with, do you typically just start with that strategy, or do you have a kind of a go-to framework for, nailing a traffic segment, or, what do you typically try to go for, if that makes sense?
Well, if someone asks me for marketing help, I probably go through 100 questions that I ask them just to get a idea on if one, the type of service that I can give to them will actually benefit them. And two, it also dispels any type of preconceived notions on what they need, because the same way as pet owners have Dr. Google, being a marketing expert as well, there's marketing expert Google as well. So they see a tactic or they see a strategy and they don't think about how this could apply, and they say, oh, I want you to do this. Like, I want you to do Facebook advertising for me. Well, if your clients are not on Facebook, then you're wasting money.
Yeah.
Or they say, they ask, have you ever heard of Pinterest? Yeah, I've heard of Pinterest and I heard of that marketing, but do you really think that your clinic needs to be spending money on advertising for Pinterest? Those are the type of questions that I ask in succession, just to make sure that a strategy or tactic that we can implement into a marketing plan that they already have will work. So after I narrow down, one or two strategies that could work for them, I always go to what type of content are you willing to push out? Or what type of content do you have the capacity to push out on a given week? Because at the end of the day, the type of content you push out is king. It's what keep eyes focused on your brand. It's what educates the market. It's what builds authority. And then after that, it's what actually will sell your service to the pet owners. And yes, you have your loyal following that's going to always come to your clinic. But that's only 3% of the market within your area that's probably coming to you. You have an entire, I'm doing air quotes now, bell curve of potential pet owners that need your service. Yes, some may be going to other clinics, but they may not be satisfied with those clinics, and you may be the clinic that they need. So creating content that, one, serves those that already follow you, but also educates the other 97% about you, is content that you would create. So that's a second portion of what I would do with them. And then after that, it's just about the finding the right demographics based on data that they have that they already have, based on if they have the metrics and the analytics set up correctly. Like what services do they already provide that people want? Those demographics, we use the type of content that's catered to that. We'll use that because that's low hanging fruit. That if you take just the statistics of who they are compared to the market, and if you expand that, those statistics usually hold true, especially if they're true statistics. So if you're marketing to, just say, 1,000 people, and out of 1,000 people, 30 people have your service and they like the content you produce. If you market that 1,000 to 10,000, that 30 becomes 300, and that could be life changing for any clinic. having 250, 270 extra clients per month.
Definitely. So that's some really good stuff there with content. And I've exclusively, like, the offerings that I do for clients is now almost exclusively ad related, right? Especially for veterinary practices. And so I've been out of the content space for veterinary hospitals. I see a lot of hospitals doing content things. What is your kind of ideal content type? And I know you just mentioned it depends on your target demographics and things, but when you're talking about content, what do you think right now is the best type of content to be producing, and especially for repurposing of things? Like, do you think that repurposing is a good strategy, and how can you get more out of the content that you're producing?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer that in two parts. The first part is, what type of content do I see as the most important? And I was doing some reading on, like, the new like the Google Eat algorithm for SEO, right? And what that algorithm is basically doing is saying we want the experts to push out expert knowledge. So it's basically separating, just within the vet space, the veterinarians that push out content against against, just say, Polly the pug pushing out content. That's had a pug for 10 years, know everything about the pugs, but pushing content. The difference between the two contents are the experts tend to speak an expert language. And Polly the pug type blogs, type websites speak in conversational language like we're having now. And if you think about the type of media that's pushed out, the type of movies, the type of books, even the type of the recordings, it's catered more towards conversational than sheer technical language. So the type of content that I would push towards the vets would be, all the technical aspects of the animals that you're servicing. Now take that highly technical, doctor level information and break it down to where an 8th or 9th grader could understand it. Because if you look at the numbers on the average reading level in the United States is at a 8th grade, second semester high school level. That's where people are comfortable. So if you're talking at a PhD doctorate level, at DMB level, you're missing the point with getting information across, because at the end of the day, marketing and advertising is about stealing entertainment time from the people that you're trying to service. Especially on the internet. You get on the internet to either ask questions with Google or to entertain yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to ask, and if you're asking questions, you want to be able to understand what's being said. So the vets, I always tell them to explain the information to where an 8th grader or a 9th grader could understand it.
That's really interesting to me, and it makes a lot of sense too, because I mean, I know that from an ad side, that the Google and Facebook and all these other platforms are really trying to combat, whether it's like fair housing violations or all major issues that are arising. And I think one of the organic content issues that have just been blown up in the past, I'd say 5 years, and it's just really come to a peak in 2020, was misinformation from experts, right? And what does that expert really mean? So that means, I mean, it seems like a very much of a parallel of what's been happening in the ad space with needing to verify services and running ads for like I forget the exact word that they used, but when we run ads and there's a stem cell on the page, that's against the rules of running ads to that and things. And so that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a huge takeaway, because you have internet expert is the air quotes, there's a million internet experts out there, but differentiating yourself as the veterinarian is huge. And ultimately, I think Google really wants to produce those kinds of search engine results because higher credibility,
Yeah. And that particular term in Google is called your money or your life. So YMYL. And basically, like I explained, it's basically anyone that's an expert in the field in a field of finance or medicine or any type of health related fields, something that could where misinformation could kill you or misinformation can make you go bankrupt, then those type of expert fields are segmented based on the authority that you have within your particular industry and based on your expertise level.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are certain ways that we use that to our advantage, which is not really hard, but I believe that when we talk about structuring content for search engines, so we make it seem harder than it really is, and that's something I'll talk about a little bit later. But when you ask the question about how to produce content, I think that was the second question, right?
Yep, that was the second part of that question. I need to ask one singular questions because I mixed those two things in there. But yep, that's for repurposing. Like, what actual content type would you suggest?
So I am a huge proponent of video.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I got into into digital marketing, into internet marketing, this was right around the time when the cell phones had the capacity for 1080p and HD video. When this was around the time when what's the platform? Snapchat was real big, and Instagram purchased the they done Snapchat type features with the Instagram stories. Facebook added it. So I saw that content was being viewed on your phone more. And if everyone has jobs, then the content that they view, they're viewing it usually in the bathroom, usually at break time. And so they want to see the video. And even now I'm looking to see that they want to see the video with closed captions as well. So I always tell my clients to produce video for every piece of content that you want to produce. So if you're writing an article, do that article on video first, then use the transcript to write your blog.
Mm-hmm.
That same transcript could be used as closed captions for the video that you produce. And if you have just say 3 or 4 just highly entertaining and educational moments within that particular content, have your media person, if you have one, if you're outsourcing to like someone like me, will do those 5 or 6 clips, and that's content for your business. And when it comes to older content, I believe people tend to think that your content, everyone on the planet views your content.
Mm-hmm.
So something that was produced 6 or 9 months ago, that if they reproduce it now, that they will know 6 months ago they produced the same article. That's not the case. So if you have old articles that are still relevant, and in the marketing space we call that Evergreen Articles, that means it's relevant over time.
Yeah.
So if you have articles, if you have videos like that, if they're still relevant today, and there may be like some tweaks in language that you want, retweak the language and post it again. Because
Absolutely.
even if 1 or 2 people read it 6 months ago, they probably won't remember it, and it'll be new information to them. And it also makes you feel good that you have brand new content because you tweaked maybe 5 or 10% of the language.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really smart. And I know that veterinarians are just so strapped for time too. If they can take that workload off themselves, where if they shoot a video, and I know people are nervous about being on video, but I think there's so many benefits to it. And obviously don't expect that you're going to be like super charismatic or like the best off the bat. But if you can create a video, then you can create so much more content out of it. Cause I'll have people that say like to me, like, hey, can you write an ad for me about this very technical subject? It's like, that's not my skill set. I'm not, and content people that are good at content, we're not doctors, and we don't know the things to say because we haven't been to medical school, so that technical knowledge and take it into content. If you're just able to speak about it. And that's the thing too, is that veterinarians, they know all this stuff so well, but they think everybody else knows it too. And the reality is nobody knows what they know. So they need to get it out there, so I think that's really, really solid. And I mean, I can't tell you too how many times I've heard that as well from people like, well, I've already posted that, I don't want to repost it. It's like, post it once a day on Facebook and you're, it's not that often. I can't even remember the content I've made over the past years. So it's not like I would expect anybody else to remember it either. So
look, I'm the same. I'm the same way. I have reproduced the same content probably every quarter. I reproduce something that I reproduced last quarter just because as I check my numbers, I know that everyone hasn't read it. I may get 500 or 600 people that have read a blog post, but if I'm trying to reach 1,000 people, then that's 500 people that haven't read it, and the 500 people before that's read it probably don't remember it.
Absolutely. I think too that recency, and I'm not sure if that's a factor anymore, but back when I used to learn things about SEO, recency of a post was helpful in that, Google wants to serve relevant data that's up to date. And so updating content too helps to keep your rankings higher because they figure if you're updating it and maintaining it, it's going to help that. But I'm not 100% sure if that's a thing anymore. So I have to default to you.
Yeah, well, they changed the percentage of the algorithm because you have very savvy gray Jedi type of marketers that push the bounds on what is ethical and what is not. Mm-hmm. So there may be 400 or 500, sometimes up to 600 updates that Google push in their SEO algorithm per year, just because if we say relevant content is a huge factor in SEO, what's the first thing that a lot of SEO experts are going to suggest? All your content, make it relevant, push it, because that's the main factor. So they're considerably they're tweaking, but it is still a factor.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so with ranking and SEO, which I know are just kind of like major, I mean, that means so much in general. Is there any serious misconceptions that you think people are either doing wrong or something that they should be doing more of, that you think is really, really important for people to think about?
All right. So the first thing that I think that they tend to do is create SEO content first, using tools like Moz, using tools like if they work with WordPress, use like Rank Math or Yoast SEO. Right? They create content with keywords that when it comes to the relevancy of being ranked, it works, but when it comes to the conversion rate of what you really want the content to do, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and because again, the algorithm is just a computer program that are written by people that think, okay, this is good, this shows relevancy, this shows authority, but it doesn't really show how it affects people when they read it. So, for instance, let's say you have a and I use an example for me. If at one point in time I was rafting down the Coy River in Tennessee and I fell off, right? And if I had to write about that using keywords and SEO, it would be how I fell off of the raft at the Ocoee. Okay, that's a great headline, SEO ranking headline. Then you'd put, my name is Brandon Boyd, and at the Ocoee River in, I forgot the city, so I'm just going to say Memphis, Tennessee. I was riding a 14-foot blue and yellow Chitaki raft. Right, that's SEO content because you have different keywords that make you pull up with different searches. Right, instead of writing,
sure.
I had this. Like, hey, I'm Brandon. I had this one time I fell off the raft and I thought I died. I saw my life flash before my eyes in a minute and a half in my mind. But when I checked my GoPro video, only 12 seconds has passed. Now, which one of those two pieces of content would you want to read?
Yeah, that the story in the account that's entertaining and interesting instead of the technical, like where you're going to be ranking for Blue Raft and like make your name and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So writing content that first entertains and then educates. Now that first paragraph of how I fell, I could use that paragraph for writing the best practices of being safe within a raft while going down a category 4 river, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have the interesting first one or two paragraphs, and then you have the technical stuff in the middle. But if you watch Yoast SEO, the app, if you're writing for that, they want you to have the keywords in the top paragraph because Google ranks for that.
Yep.
So that's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I understand what the SEO is and why it works with the algorithm, because you want to get ranked first. But the context of the content is lost.
Mm-hmm. The purpose of it too. Yeah. Exactly.
So what I typically do, I typically tell write content first. And I've interviewed several people on the podcast who basically said the same thing. Danielle is one of them. Dr. Jessica Vogelsang is one of them. Is create content first, and then there are certain things within your content to where you can still have the on-page SEO, the on-page SEO relevant, on the on-page SEO relevancy that they need in order to rank, such as headlines, titles, the headlines being H1, H2, and H3 tags. Backlinks if you have different sections of stories. Internal links if you have different sections of stories within your site that can link to that one, as well as backlinks as well, which is if you have use the RAF example, if you have some relevant safety data on what you've done in your explanation, then link that site. Link the site. That gives more authority to what you're writing because you have outside information that's verifying what you wrote in your article.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to high school for a minute. If you think about the term papers that you had to write, the English papers that you had to write, what was one of the big things? Make sure you have your sources, and your sources have to be from relevant sources.
Yep.
So that's basically what the SEO is on Google. Make sure you have your relevant sources. Make sure you have your formatting right. And if you still remember English class and in junior and senior in high school, you have APA and you have MLA. So make sure that you have the right structure. The right structure gets you through the door, and that in and of itself will boost your rankings. And then at that point, the content that you have is what actually sells the rest of the power of your site, especially as the algorithm is evolving now.
Definitely. And that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's some really good actionable info. And I guess, is there anything else that I think is that you would say is a serious misconception when it comes to, I would say, SEO in general right now that people are facing and thinking about?
So the power of using social media platforms as a way to boost rankings, it seems like it's minuscule, but it has a huge effect.
Mm-hmm.
So because it connects two worlds. It connects the social media world, the web 2.0, but it also connects the relevancy of what you're doing within your business. If you have 10,000 reviews on social media, but you don't have none on Google My Business, to me it makes sense to where you use plugins to connect your Facebook reviews to your website.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you have relevant posts within Facebook that are just snippets, have those connected to your site as well, and do the same thing with your website, because your website is going to gain traffic from the amount of people that you have on your social media, because you're building followings in different places.
Yep, that's a really good point. I forget that social signals are an important part of SEO, and that makes sense. So connecting your site, and especially, I don't think I see anybody doing blog posts that have social, at least from the practice level, the social share buttons and social signal buttons from plugins and things very often. I think I don't never see that actually.
Yeah.
I think people kind of put their content out there as like a static piece of information that just is meant to be viewed and not really engaged with.
Yeah.
A lot of times, because I guess they're probably thinking of building content for that, the bot and the ranking more so than the person that'll be reading it, which is a big missed opportunity for sure.
Yeah. It is, and today is, and I know Gary Vaynerchuk is one of the big figures in the marketing space that pushes, being relationable, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more relationable you are in your content, the better off your practice will be, because they see you as human instead of this almost. And I'm going to use this term with air quotes too, this almost godlike figure, because there's this type of idea of what doctors are, that they're almost perfect, they're the most intelligent, they're perfect in every way, but we know from working in the industry that they have the same issues and same pressures that we do.
Yeah, they have a lot more pressures because they're running with multiple species of animals and all the people involved with that, and and then I feel people bring in their expectations that they'll be just completely perfect, which is impossible to achieve.
But you see a lot of vet practice owners, they want to keep that persona of I'm the doctor, nothing goes wrong. You don't have you can still be authentic, show your clientele that you're human just like them, and still keep your professionalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I think that's really, really great. Well, I really appreciate your time today. There were some really, really solid takeaways, and it was a good refresher for me too. I'm going to be going and checking some things on my site, updating some stuff on my content that I'm reminded of from this conversation. So I really appreciate it. Where's the best place for people to get hold of you, Brandon? And how can people reach out to you?
So if you want to reach out to me on Instagram, you can reach out to me at Vet and Pet SEO. That's one stream of letters, Vet and Pet SEO. The site and the vet agency is vetandpetseo.com. And if you want to listen to the Practice Heist podcast, you can find me on Instagram at the Practice Heist podcast, or vetandpetseo.com/the Practice Heist podcast.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it. And we'll have to have you back on or do some kind of a training inside of the Facebook group and things in the future at some point. But I really appreciate it.
Hey, I love it, and I'd be honored. Thank you again, Brandon.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure again to subscribe. If you have any questions, head on over to that Facebook group. And thank you so much, Brandon, for being on the podcast. Hope to have you on again soon. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out, but I'll see you on the next episode. Everybody have a great day.